Welcome to For the Sake of Heaviness. My name is Butch Balich. I'm here as always with
Merciful Mike.
tonight we have Andrew CAGNA with us. A freaking very definition of a metal lifer. Dude has more records than I have fingers and toes, and that's just in the last 10 years. Welcome to the show, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for
Andrew.
having me, y'all. It's good to see y'all. It's been a long time.
It's been too long, man. It is awesome to see your face, man. Thanks for
Same.
joining us tonight.
Same. Absolutely. My pleasure.
All right. There's been so much going on in the Andrew camp, but I kind of want to start with like a little bit of like background. So we're going to kind of just do a little bit of a timeline thing here, and we're going to back all the way up to the beginning. Tell us about young Andrew. How did you get into metal? Where did it go? How did it morph? Just, give us that rundown.
1988. I was 12 years old, and like kids do, we don't have money when we're 11, 12 years old, so we barter, we trade things, right?
Oh, yeah.
So there's this younger kid in the neighborhood, and there was some toy that I had that he wanted, and he's like, give me that, man. I'll trade you something for it. And I'm like, well, what do you got? I'm 12 years old, so I'm getting out of toys, And he's like, my brother gave me this tape, and it was Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. And I was like, okay, cool. So I traded him and listened to that tape, and my life changed forevermore. And from that point, I became obsessed with Maiden for a couple of years and slowly started to absorb other things, but quickly gravitated towards extreme stuff. Once I heard 1990 rolled around and I heard Napalm Death for the first time and Sepultura and bands like that. And I just became obsessed with all things extreme. So I dove full on into death metal, grindcore, wallowed in that for a handful of years until black metal hit, and then I wallowed in that. I started playing, early 90s, and I started singing only because I was broke as shit, and I really wanted to play drums, but I didn't have any money. So I was the best singer in the group of friends that I had at the time. So by default, I just sang, and it was the cheapest instrument. So it worked out. And we did like thrash metal covers, like Pantera, Testament, Overkill, Nuclear Assault, all that stuff. And I think I was only in one cover band before I transitioned into original music. I started playing guitar for a black metal band called Dethroned in 95 and did that for a couple of years, then broke off, did my own black metal project with a guy that was in that other one. And then from there, it gets blurry. What Angel Rust came out around the late 90s, early 2000s. That was like melodic death metal, and that stuck around for like 10 years. Mm-hmm. Got into Dovka, singing traditional heavy metal, and that's where I really actually like learned how to sing. I think up until then I was just kind of like feeling around in the dark, and that was the first time I ever worked with like top tier like virtuosic musicians, and it really was a humbling experience. It really like got me better really fast. And, I think the rest from there, because it wasn't long after that. I got in Brimstone Coven with Corey.
Right.
2016 rolled around and I started the Ironflame thing. 2018, I got into Icarus Witch, and here I am juggling all three of those. And this whole time I've been working with Aaron Carey in Nachachuan since 2009 as well. So yeah, I got a couple of things going on.
A couple of irons in the fire.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
I just want to touch on one thing real quick. I just want to come back to Brimstone Coven. Now that's still a very active band? Because I've worked with you and
It's
Brimstone.
still chugging, man.
Yeah.
It's still alive. We're whatever. We're almost 15 years old right now. We're 14 this year. We'll be 14 years old.
Crazy.
2011 we started, and we're still going. We're working on a new album right now. It's tracked. The songs we've been playing for a couple of years now, and we've just been really taking our time with things. We never force anything, so kind of let it happen naturally. We recorded over the spring and the summer, got done at the end of summer, and so now we're just really taking our time mixing it.
Sure.
But our last album was 2020, so it's been a while. We're due, but I know every band says this, but I think it's the best Brimstone Coven stuff yet. I know every band says that when their new album's coming out, but
yeah.
Who's putting that out for you? Is that Ripple?
We don't know yet. We're still we just have conversations about pros and cons about whether we want to be on a label or not. And it's still kind of undecided. I think we're going to shop it and see what happens. And if the right deal comes along, then cool. And if it doesn't come along, then we're just going to self-release it. I mean, we've done both things. We've been on Metal Blade. We've been on Ripple. We've been on, labels. We've been off labels. I feel, everybody's got their own opinions in the band, but I noticed right around 2018 when we were self-reliant and independent, I feel like that's when we had the most fire under us and in us, and we worked the hardest, and we were the most, content and successful, I think, was around 2018. So that's my justification for wanting to be unsigned again. But, it is a democracy and a group collective, and everybody's opinion matters. So, just because I feel that way, I'm not trying to force it on anybody else. We'll handle it in a diplomatic fashion, and whatever happens, happens.
I mean, this question can actually be for you and Butch, because, you both have played. But, I mean, do you guys feel that, quote unquote, being on a label is really even necessary these days, especially when it comes to our corner of the world and the music that we appreciate the most?
How do you feel about it, Butch?
I mean, I don't have the experience of, I like being on Cruz del Sur, just because, I don't know, I think there's certain things that that Enrico can do for us and was able to do for us that I don't know if we could have done on our own, absent it's tough when it's the money part of it is what comes into it. I don't know if in terms of sales and stuff like that, Argus never sold a ton. I think it's definitely helped in some ways knock a few doors down. But then there's a lot that we also did, I think, on our own to make contacts for the things we've been able to do. So I think I prefer if someone like a small, I don't think I'd want to deal with a bigger label. But I think someone smaller like Cruz, who has can focus on the bands that he has.
Yeah.
Is good. But I think anymore, I honestly don't think labels are as important as they used to be.
It's not, there's not even anymore.
Yeah, it's not like
you're signed, so here's your tour package and here's your recording budget. It's not like that anymore, and it hasn't been like that for quite some time. No. So you're right. There's not, I mean, every deal that I've ever been involved with has been different, slightly, but at the end of the day, there's only so much that it's going to do for you. So it just, I feel like it depends on where you are as a band, as a musician, and how many connections that you have. I was having this conversation with a friend earlier today. We were talking about King Buffalo. I don't know if you know the band King Buffalo. Great band. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I mentioned that they were unsigned, and my friend, he's a bigger fan of this band than I am, and his mind was blown. He had no idea that they were an independent band. I was like, oh yeah, man, they've been independent for the past, I think maybe 3 or 4 albums. I think once they were getting started, I think they might have been a Ripple band. If I'm maybe
That sounds right. I think they were at one point.
But once they started to gain momentum and take off, I think they just sloughed off everything and became self-reliant. And you can do that nowadays if you have the wherewithal. You don't mind managing yourself. So I think they work with 2 different booking agencies, one for North America and one for Europe. And if you have that, then I think, and you have the capability to do the rest as far as recording, putting the product out, getting it into the right hands distribution wise, then you really don't need a label. And I know labels cringe when you say that, but I mean, it's the truth. I'm not saying it to smite labels, but it's the way that it is now. So, it really, it's very case specific and has to do with your connections. And it's more about people that like you two. It's people that not like, well, I know this person through this person. That only gets you so far, It's having real connections and real people that like you as a person, give a shit about your music really, and don't look at you as a number, That's the only time it's like truly advantageous to be on a label, I think.
Yeah. And it's like you said, years ago, when bands got picked up by labels, there was like, a certain amount that you got for budget. The budgets have like decreased and decreased and decreased. There's labels that don't pay you anything anymore. No. They're pretty much just distributors. And then, there's no such thing as tour support on most labels anymore, unless you're like a big Nuclear Blast,
right?
Like one of the bigger bands. Like your budget's going to be small, your tour support's going to be pretty much non-existent, and so those are like two of the main thrusts for a band to get on a label. And and with sales dipping, it's like it's 6 to 1. You're going to sell a lot of your stuff at shows anyway. These days, it's like they always say bands are like glorified t-shirt salesmen now. Like you have to go out and play and sell at your shows. So it's like if there's no more stores, I mean, there are still, thank God, independent stores out there that sell
far between.
Yeah. So it's like, it's not like the old days where it was like label would get your records in, they had big distribution. They get your records in all the record stores and they'd give you money to tour. And now labels expect you to tour, but they don't give you any money for it.
Right.
Like if you haven't already sold like thousands, they don't even want to talk to you about a recording budget or bringing you on. They're just like, so it's kind of like, I don't know.
And when I was on a bigger label, they would say this takes hard work, and if you really want this, then you'll put in the work. And it's like, it's not the issue of putting in the work. It's the issue of taking time off of your real work that pays your bills, and then hoping that you get in the van with your buddies and play a show that sells enough merchandise to fill your gas tank to get to the next show, to repeat the process 14 times, 28 times in a row, depending on the length of the tour. And with venues declining, and the venues that aren't declining are now, acting like big venues and saying like, oh, hey, welcome to our venue. By the way, we're going to take 10% of all your merchandise sales, like taking another, quarter tank of gas, out of that tank of gas, when you leave the venue. And then that's not even talking about, it's different over here than it is in Europe. And Butch, you're talking about, you play a gig or a tour, whatever, in Europe, and that you show up to the venue, they feed you, they put you up, even if it's a bunk bed in the back of the club, they put you up. It's part of the gig. And that's a lot, man. Like the travel expenses involved in touring are the lion's share of the money that's made. And when you have to rely on yourself to do that, like it is over here. It's super hard, man. It's super hard, and I've yet to turn a profit on any U.S. excursion that I've ever done. You're lucky if you might break even in Europe, make a couple of bucks in Europe, but over here, man, at least at the level of bands that I've ever been in, it's just not feasible. You're going to come back from that tour in the hole, financially, significantly speaking. Just the way
I think that's, yeah, you hear that from pretty much anybody, and they're always talking about the big difference between, you know, how the culture of metal in Europe and how it is here, and especially when it comes to tour. I mean, you know, like you were just saying, Andrew, the hospitality in Europe, and Butch, I know you've been part of this too. You know, they feed you, they treat you, you know, they show you around, they put you up, you know, they take great pride in having you as a guest.
Yes.
Whereas here, they're like, okay, thanks, get all your shit out of here, see you later. And then you hope that you know somebody nearby.
There, and it's geared with way more respect towards the artist, to where whether you're playing a festival, a big festival, or you're playing a tiny little, for lack of a better way to say it, shithole club, there's written agreements in place before you even get there. You know, it's assumed, it's in writing that you are going to get fed and you are going to have a roof over your head that night. You know, like I said, that's why everybody loves touring Europe, because you're treated like a fucking human being. I hate to talk shit on America, but you know, I mean, do better, America, as far as touring goes. Do better. You know, treat your artists better. It shouldn't be that hard to tour this country. It really shouldn't. And I just know so many friends, musician friends, that just lose their ass consistently, and financially speaking, and I don't know how they do it, because I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. So let's jump ahead a little bit here, or you know what, Butch? Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna tack on and say it anymore. Like it's kind of like that old adage about rock and roll being a young man's game. It's not so much. Obviously, a lot of us are still out there doing it that are older. But what it is that when you're 21 or 20 years old or 22, you can afford to be broke as shit. You got you don't have to lose it. You don't have to lose a job. You've spent years. You know, you're a tattoo artist. You know, you built up your business. Like to walk away from that for a few weeks, or to walk away from your job, or to, you know, few jobs are going to give you the time to like take off more than a couple weeks at a time.
Right. Well, in my case, I'm not a tattooer. I'm the owner of the tattoo shop, so it's even worse because, you know, like I have tattooers that, you know, can generate revenue for the shop while I'm gone, but the actual operation, the day-to-day operation, I don't have anybody to cover that when I'm gone. There's only me. So I can only be gone for so long. I have a life, I have a family, I have a house, you know, and, you know, I can only walk away from that for so long before it's a problem, you know, and that's everybody in our age demographic, I would say. You know, I'm not nothing special about me as far as that goes. You know, it's just the way that it is. And it's not, also, I wanted to say that it's not just heavy music either. True. You know, it's a nationwide problem regardless of what genre music you play. You can talk to, you know, any age demographic, any band in any genre, like, and ask them about touring US. And if they've never toured, you know, outside of US, they may have one opinion, but once you see the other side and see how you're treated, like it's a substantial difference for sure.
Most definitely. So can we talk about Icarus Witch a little bit?
Yeah.
Now, when I first got that news, I was like, holy crap, man, that is awesome. I was really pumped to know that you were in Icarus Witch. Can you walk us through that?
Icarus kind of went on hiatus. We released they released a Rise album in 2012, and immediately after that, there was kind of a need for the hiatus because, Chris left the band, the singer, and right around that time, and I think it was just a byproduct of Chris leaving, Jason, the bass player, who's the founding member, moved back to Salem, Massachusetts, where he had lived for a few years. So there was a geographical divide in the band. So it kind of sat pretty dormant for better part of 6 years. And when I asked Quinn to join Ironflame as a live musician, I think that gave him the idea. It coincided with Jason moving back to Pittsburgh, and that just made Quinn put 2 and 2 together and thought, well, maybe we can make this work this way. So I'll tell you an interesting story that the way I got into it was there was some subterfuge there. I will say that. So after, a few months of Quinn being a live musician for Ironflame, he came to me and said, hey man, I have this batch of songs that I've been working on. I have them demoed out, but and I have some vocals in place, but I think the vocals can be better. Would you mind listening to it? And if you don't mind trying to demo out some of the vocals. And I said, yeah, sure. I didn't have that much going on at the moment. So I listened to the songs and I liked them. And I just kind of took what he did vocally and I don't want to say refined them. I just, kind of rearranged them my way and gave them back to him. And he really liked it. And then after the fact, after I demoed an album's worth of this material, then he says, oh, hey, by the way, man, this is actually the new Icarus Witch that we're working on. So you want to be the singer in Icarus Witch now?
Welcome to the band.
He kind of hoodwinked me. I jab him about that all the time. But so, I mean, I was already emotionally invested in the music at that point. So he had me hook, line, and sinker, really. So that's how that happened. That's how Goodbye Cruel World came about. And then we started working very slowly on the next record, which came out last year, No Devil Lived On, which is a completely different album than Goodbye Cruel World, if you ask me, but in a different and good way. It's a borderline progressive album, really, if you listen to it. It goes a lot of different places, and it still sounds like Icarus Witch, but man, there's a technical aspect to the band that maybe the band flirted with before, but never really full on took out on a hot date like it did. This one, it's a juggernaut of an album, man. I'm super proud of it. I'm still riding really high off of it, and I was a little apprehensive about the reception that it would receive, but it seems to have gotten really good reception. So
yeah, I really enjoyed the last 2 records. I've liked Icarus Witch since they started, but I really think your addition to the band really brings everything together. Nothing against former members of the band, but it just makes so much sense to me when I heard you were in the band, and then when the records came out, I'm like, yes, of course.
Right on. Well, I appreciate that, man. I think we definitely have some chemistry, and now it's almost laughable because 3/4 of the band is the live lineup for Ironflame.
Ironflame, yeah.
So I mean, it has its advantages. We can tour together and quite easily, But then again, I guess it has potentially a kind of a confusing aura about it too, because wasn't this the same band that was just I guess the music's different, but it's the same people. But it's Jason's baby at its heart, at its core. He's the soul behind the lyrics. He's the soul behind all of the visual concepts, lyrical concepts, and I don't know, the ideas and the concepts that he comes up with are so fantastic. Um, I could never dream up the stories and the storylines that he comes up with. He really is the soul of the band for sure. Yeah.
Does when you guys are writing then for a record, does Jason do all the like the actual lyrics themselves, or does he come up with the concepts and you guys collaborate, or he says, here's the story, I'm gonna
No,
hand it off to you so you could fit it? Do you do the vocal melodies yourself, or is this all Jason's baby? And
so the way it's really, I don't want to say weird, but unique. I'm going to say unique. It's really unique the way we write this stuff because, so I think about I think about 70% of the music comes from Quinn, and 30% of the music will come from Jason. 90% of the lyrics will come from Jason. So those two put their heads together initially with all that music and all the lyrics, and they kind of convene themselves and come up with the structures of the songs. Jason gives Quinn the lyrics, and then and this is per my request the way this is done, but Jason will give Quinn the lyrics, and Quinn will come up with lyrical with no patterns, melodies and things like that. And he'll lay them down himself. He will demo them himself. And then they program drums as a backdrop, and then they send me that stuff. And so I have rough demos of everything. And then just like I did in the beginning, I'll take those vocal ideas, arrange them in my style, but the foundation of them is based off of the melodies and stuff that Quinn comes up with Jason's lyrics. And I wanted it that way on purpose because when they asked me to join the band, my biggest fear was it sounding too much like Ironflame.
right.
And I told him that. I said, look, if you leave me in charge of the vocals and the lyrics and all that stuff solely, it will sound too much like this. I'm not that versatile. I'm too much of a one-trick pony. So if you give me something completely different to work off of, then I might be able to do something that doesn't sound like me. And it's worked out really well in the respect that it forces me to go places vocally that I would never have went before. And I don't know, like there's a lot of bravery on my part, I guess, because like I said, if me listening back to it, all I can think is, wow, that's really cool. I would have been scared to death to try that vocal idea before. You know, I wouldn't have had the courage or the bravery to try to sing that way or to sound that way. So it kind of forces me to be a better musician. And like I said, now I think there's a tangible difference between Goodbye Cruel World and No Devil Lived On in the respect that we had a session drummer for Goodbye Cruel World, John Rice. If you know who John Rice is, I'm sure he's kind of a low-key rock star in his own right. But No Devil Lived On was a full lineup. We had a drummer. So we did the same thing with Noah on drums. We did everything on our part to like get it as close to ready as possible, and then gave it to Noah. And then Noah did what I do and reinterpreted the rhythm section his way. And that's why I think it came out sounding like this progressive technical beast that it turned out to be. There's nothing but advantages to working this way, I think. And, if Noah was here, I think he'd say the same thing.
Nice.
So,
go ahead, Mike.
No, go for it. Go for it.
I just I know the No Devil Lived On just came out in 23, but are you guys already looking towards the next one, like starting to work
Exactly.
at it, or
That's where I was
No
going.
idea. Well, I mean, those guys might be working on stuff behind the scenes and not. It's a different dynamic with us too, compared to Ironflame. Like Ironflame tries to rehearse like once a week.
Mhm.
We, with the holidays and the bad weather and stuff, we don't always accomplish that. But at least when show season is, in effect, like the nice weather and stuff is around, then we're normally seeing each other once a week, rehearsing. Icarus, which is not that way, and we basically only get together when we absolutely have to. And I mean,
show's coming up.
well, I mean, exactly. Show's coming up, and we might have a rehearsal. We might have two rehearsals. If we have two rehearsals, it's awesome, but it's just the way that it works out, and I don't like nobody really complains about it. It's just the way that it is. So, we'll have yearly meetings. Like, well, haven't seen each other in 10.5 months. We should probably get together and have dinner and talk about what we're going to do this year. Like, that's really how it goes with Icarus. And it may seem unorthodox or whatever, but it works. It's worked thus far. I mean, we're 7 years into this way of working, and it worked for us. So why not?
Any
So
live
far,
stuff
so good,
coming
man.
up?
What's that?
Any shows coming up? Any live stuff?
No, nothing on the horizon just yet. I don't. It's been a slow year. Like Ironflame shows are slowly lining up and peppering in. We're talking about going to Europe in September, and Brimstone's lining up random shows here and there. But again, it's not quite as active as like last year. So, I don't feel one way or the other about that. Like, yeah. I let show seasons, like how active we are, I let that ebb and flow naturally. Yeah. I don't get angry if we're cranky if we're not playing as much as we did the year before. Like, yeah, it's fine.
I think you learn that after a while too. It's sure. Once you get into those winter months, especially in the geographical areas that we're at, it's like,
oh yeah,
let it snow and we'll deal with that in the spring.
I just flat out refuse to play shows in the winter. I just do. So from November to March, no days. We're and it's cool because it kind of forces the hand of creativity. You take that time during the downtime, the winter months, to write and record, rehearse, all that stuff. So you use the time constructively, and you don't have to worry about dying on the way to a bar gig in the middle of winter.
Yeah, those just aren't worth it anymore.
They're not. They're absolutely not.
So Ironflame, I know it started out simply as you doing everything. I know it's evolved into its own entity with a full live band and everything, but back in the beginning it was all you. How did you go about writing? What was the genesis of Ironflame?
Do you Mike, I don't expect you to know him, but Butch, did you know Chris Zenner?
Yeah, Chris used to do sound when we played with you with Dofka.
Yeah. And he was also in a band. He was in a cover band called Tension, which still exists. And he had an incredible voice. I don't know if you knew that about him, but I'm talking like Dio level pipes, man. This dude had pipes. And him and I were tight back in the Dofka days. He was our go-to sound guy. We used him whenever we could. And we always used to, kind of joke at the end of the night. We'd be really drunk and, argue over he'd always say that I sang better than him. And I would say, no, that's bullshit. You sing way better than me. So he unexpectedly passed away in October of 2016. He had an aneurysm and passed away very rapidly, very suddenly. And Dofka reunited temporarily to play a benefit show to help his family pay for the funeral costs. And when that happened, it just stirred up a lot of feelings. It made me realize that, you know, I hadn't sang traditional heavy metal in years, and his death like really hit me kind of hard, man. And it just kept nagging at me that he would be disappointed in me that I hadn't been using my voice for heavy metal. And like, I don't know. I guess it's that, you know, when you lose a loved one, you feel that level of guilt on some level or another. You know, you kind of internalize it and you make it,
Sure.
I don't know. But so that's what I was feeling. So I told myself I'm going to write an album in honor of Chris, a heavy metal album in honor of Chris. And that's all I had planned to do, was write that album, put it out, sell a couple copies of it to friends, and move on with my life. And that was the plan. But I also wanted to put it out on vinyl because it was traditional heavy metal, and vinyl was, you know, still pretty hot.
Sure.
So, you know, vinyl's not cheap, and I had to self-finance it. So I had to promote it on the internet if I wanted to sell enough copies to try to make my money back. So that's what I did. And man, I don't know if you know this, so you probably do know this, but there are like a slew of people on YouTube and everything else that are just like constantly trolling for new bands and new music.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't long after I put out a couple of promo videos on YouTube promoting the album that people caught wind of it. And not long after that, Brimstone had a gig. Well, you know, the Ragnarok festival that was going on for years in Chicago, that turned into Legions of Metal.
Yep.
So that's Bob Byrne. That's his baby. And Brimstone got asked to do one of the first Legions of Metal in 2017. I looked at the lineup and I was like, man, this is a killer lineup. I honestly have no idea why Brimstone is on this, because Brimstone, to me, is not a heavy metal band whatsoever. Like, we're a hard rock band, but okay. It just so happened there was some scheduling conflict, and Brimstone couldn't do it. But it coincided with the Ironflame album coming out, and Dofka, who did some solos on it, on the Ironflame record, pretty much immediately after he heard the music was like, when are you going to turn this into a live band and play shows? I was like, that's not the point, man. I don't want to do that. And I thought, well, maybe I should do a show or two to sell these records. So that was all I was going to do a show or two. So I reached out to Bob Byrne and said, hey, Brimstone can't play Legions of Metal, but I got this other project that's just getting up. And I sent him a track, and he was like, oh, yeah. I'm like, okay. So that was like that was our second gig, was playing Legions of Metal.
No kidding.
So the first gig was a gig in Toledo just on the way there. But we played that. And again, this is circling back to what we're talking about. It's all about who you know. Bob is really good friends with Oliver, who puts on Keep It True Festival. Yeah. And it was Bob who talked to Oliver and said, hey, this new band just played my festival and they're awesome. Check them out. And that led to Oliver asking us to come play Keep It True.
Wow.
From that point, you know, and Butch will tell you this too, I think once you get a foot in the door in Europe, that's really all you need, is just a little bit of leverage. And the rest can kind of take care of itself. So, after Keep It True, it just started to ascend from there. And, you know, by 2019, we were doing, you know, like a proper European tour over there. And, that's how it happened.
Did that catch you by surprise? I'm assuming, because you just put this out as I mean, what a hell of a tribute it ended up becoming, right?
Yeah, seriously.
Dude, I mean, and part of me thinks like, well, that's my cosmic affirmation. That's Chris saying, "Here you go, buddy. Thanks for doing this. Good job." It's like anything else. It's like right place, right time, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm not a very I'm not a religious person, but I'm a very spiritual person, and I like to think that Chris definitely sprinkled some cosmic dust on that whole situation and helped make it happen for sure.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
So can I ask you, you played all the instruments there for a little bit. How do you demo out your own music when you're playing everything? What's the process like that? But to me, that just would be overwhelming. There's no way I could wrap my head around that.
Well, I still do, for the record. I still do perform it, all the instruments on the record except for guitar solos, which I've never done because I can't do them. I'm terrible at them. So the first album, I got together. I had 8 songs, and I got 4 musicians together and had them do 2 solos on each record. And then once it started to take off, Dofka was part of the live lineup at the time, so I gave Dofka all the solos on the second record. Dofka left the live lineup shortly thereafter, and then I got, it was Quinn and Jesse, who are still there today. So from that point on, I just appointed them, and they've been doing the solos ever since. But apart from that, I've written and recorded, performed everything on the albums, and it's always been that way, and it probably always will be that way. For sake of ease, I've never demoed anything. None of those songs were demoed. The first album fell out of my brain in like a week or something, and the next album was a couple of weeks. But there has been no demoing process. Now it's changed a bit over the years. In like after the first couple albums, I thought to myself, well, am I doing myself and the music a disservice by just committing to the first thing that comes to my head?
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it would be better if I wrote more songs. So then I started writing more songs. I'd write the music for 20 songs and then whittle it down to an album's length, and then go with that. And that's pretty much been the method ever since. I'll write a batch of songs and then whittle them down, and before I present it to the guys, I've already got it condensed into what will be the album. But there's really no like re-recording of anything. Anything that's recorded was recorded one time, and that's it. Okay,
so you're recording right out of the gate, knowing that's the take that'll end up on a record. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, there's here and there, like now that more time is spent on the records, and more time is spent like in between records, there might be little things here and there that I'll the songs will be done for 6 months, and then I'll have an idea like, oh, well, maybe this harmony will work better than that harmony, and sure. I might go back and re-record a little piece of something, but it's very minimal.
So how do you are you pretty much in the studio in your spare moments, like all the time, like working on music and
in waves? In waves. Like I take this time of year to compose. The winter time is when I actually write the ideas, but during the times that we're out playing shows and stuff, the music is normally always written by then, and I'm spending the summer months or the spring or fall or whatever, spending that time mixing, mastering, or waiting, giving the guitar players time to lay down solos and stuff like that. Right. So it's I'm constantly doing something with it, just in stages, basically.
Excellent.
I imagine with the workload you've got, I mean, you have everything you need at your fingertips at your own house, correct?
I do. Yeah.
So as soon as whenever creativity strikes, you can just run down and
Yes,
put it in.
thankfully I can.
Yeah.
And and I'll do that too, like anytime, because ideas hit at whenever they hit, right? So, at various times I'll, be going to bed, and I'll be on my way up to the bedroom, and I'll think of a riff. I'll be right back. I just record riffs on my phone, so I have probably dozens of riffs, on little videos on my phone. And when it's time to actually sit down and compose, I go through those and be like, yeah, that's a worthy riff, and try and use that as a foundation for a song.
Do you constantly have riffs in your head? I don't have that gift. I was never lucky enough to be, with like-minded people to create. But I know a lot of people have talked about it, that, there's always riffs in their head.
Yeah.
Constantly rearranging in their head. And then it's like, oh, that's the one.
It's not constant, but I know when it's there, and I know, I've learned from experience to lay it down then and there, because you could have the greatest riff idea in your head and be like, oh man, that's super cool. I'm about to go to sleep. I'll remember that tomorrow. You will never remember. You'll never remember it. So when you get it, lay it down and record it. Capture it somehow. Yes.
So what's your process then for when you get around to the lyrics and to the melodies? You pretty much write the music first, then come up with your melodies, or do you do melodies and lyrics at the same time, or do you always keep a notebook, or how do you approach that?
Lyrics are a chore to me.
Really?
I never felt adept at them. And so the first 2 albums were nothing was written. I would come up with ideas as I'm recording, once the music was done, of course, and it was time to do vocals. I'd sit down in front of the computer with the music. The first thing that came to my head was what I laid down, and I normally never changed it.
Wow.
Well, just because of the pressure, I feel like it's too much pressure to come up with ideas, and I don't feel like I'm good at it. So that was the first couple of albums, and then since then I've started writing lyrics, but again, it never flows freely from me. It just doesn't come naturally to me. I might come up with like a melody or something like that. And sometimes I'll do that. Sometimes if I'm really that starved for ideas, I'll go through the song as an act of desperation. I'll go through the song and like bark out cadences.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, right. Well, it's and then write the words around the demoed cadences that I come up with. But a lot of times, as far as like the inspiration for lyrics, although I have a legitimate struggle with coming up with the lyrics themselves, I come up with song titles a lot. And I have a note in my phone that it's like a list of like dozens and dozens and dozens of song titles. So, once the music is written, I'll go through them and I'll be like, okay, this sounds like it could be a song called Seekers of the Blade. Let's write a song called Seekers of the Blade. Yeah. So I kind of let it be the seed of the lyrics that will, actually form the song at the end. But yeah, I'd like to say that, years and years of doing vocals have, resulted in me it being an effortless process, but it's totally not. It's a chore and it's a struggle every single time.
That takes me by
Yeah.
surprise a bit. I got to be honest with you, because
Mhm.
with the amount of music you create and knowing that you sing, I thought,
Well, put
Man.
this in perspective too, Mike. Like, so all the projects or all the bands that I may be involved in, Ironflame is the only one that is like my baby. You know what I mean?
sure, that makes total
So
sense.
like, I just told you, Icarus Witch. I don't write one
Right.
word in that thing. And Brimstone Coven, that's all Corey's baby.
Yeah.
Corey writes everything. Nachachwin, like him and Aaron and I collaborate on things, but I normally only come in with input, especially lyrically, with Nachachwin when he's hit a total brick wall and he's just at a loss.
Right.
Then I'll jump in and try and help, but I don't have much creative input in any of those bands, and I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. I actually like that. I prefer it that way because that retains the identities of all those individual projects.
Very true.
Yep.
Very true.
Of all the instruments you play, which is there one you do prefer, guitar or bass? Or I mean, you're so good at everything. So drum, bass in your face.
I love bass. I always love bass. Yeah, it's just a joy to play, man. And I don't know. Yeah, I've played drums in bands. I hated it. I've played guitar in bands, and I mean, guitar is fun to a point, but it takes a lot of concentration. I don't know, and it's not like bass doesn't, but bass is what's always come the most naturally to me, I guess. It just feels right.
Yeah.
Yep, it just feels right.
Is there anything? I mean, you've done so much different stuff. From you go from you got the true metal stuff, and you have the doomy stuff with Brimstone Coven, and you black metal with Nachachwin, and Sequia, and you've just been across the board. You've done death metal. Is there anything like? And then like you played on Giro's latest record. Like you have your fingers in so much different stuff. Is there something that you what I'm trying to think out of frame. Is there stuff you haven't done yet that you're thinking that you'd really like to get into at some point? Try something, or
I mean, if there's stuff that I like that I probably couldn't do, but I think everything that I'm physically capable of doing as a musician, I've pretty much already done. But I can't pick a favorite. I'm a real metal fan, man. I love it all. Like I can't say like, well, my heart lies in traditional heavy metal, but I kind of like black metal. Like I love black metal. I love death metal. I love grindcore. I love traditional heavy metal. I love all that stuff, man. I love gothic metal. I wish I had like a Peter Steele type voice, so I could do some like gothic stuff. But again, I know if I tried that, it would not sound right. But yeah, I just I don't know. Garrow's stuff. I love the music that Garrow writes. Him and I have collaborated together for years now on music. I think he's a fantastic songwriter, and he's a hard musician to classify too. You can't really put him in a box, but yeah, I don't know, man. I just love it all. Like I've always said from day one, there's good music and there's everything else.
Yeah,
right.
Like genres are cool if you're trying to describe something to somebody, but that's where it ends. After that, it's irrelevant. It's either it rocks or it doesn't rock.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it.
Oh, that makes sense.
I hear you.
All right, I don't know if this isn't really a question, but I want you to kind of walk me through something.
Okay.
And Butch, feel free to chirp in on this too. I'm very envious of both of you because you've been to Europe and you've been lucky enough to, perform over there. I've never been there. And for the longest time, for me, the Mecca was got to go to Wacken. But I've kind of switched that around a little bit, and with the popularity and the lineups that keep it true, to me that's the one that's big on my list. So what was it like? I mean, was it just
Well, that was the first big festival I've ever played.
right?
I think I played a couple other festivals, but I don't know if I've played in front of that many people to this day.
Wow.
And they were kind and gave us the opening slot on Saturday. And they assured us, like, I know it's, even though it's the opening slot, people will be there. So people were just kind of like climbing out of their tents when we started playing. And I'm glad that it happened the way that it did, because when we were sound checking and when we first started playing, there may have only been a couple of hundred people in front of us. But by the time we were done, that hall was full all the way to the back, and there had to be 1,500 people there.
That's amazing.
So, if there were that many people there, the second we started playing, I would have just stood there and pissed myself in front of 1,500 European metal fans. So I'm glad that it didn't happen that way. But it was good, because I slowly gained my confidence and got warmed up and looser as the set went on. I was really stressing not so much on the amount of people that were in front of me, but the time. I didn't want to be the unprofessional band that ran over on time. And there so many festivals, there's a gigantic clock off to the side of the stage that's telling you how long you've been playing. And thankfully we were like down to like the second when we got done.
That's awesome.
But that was like a really nervous thing. What helped make me feel less nervous was, like, the most shocking thing to this day, because we were such a new, fresh band, was playing the songs, and 2 or 3 songs in, looking out at people that I've never met before that knew every word to the song that I was singing. Like, that was like mind blowing to me. But it was the ego boost that I needed to, not piss myself in front of European metal fans. It was just, I can't say enough good things about that festival. It's, Oliver keeps it low key enough. He's a perfect line straddler, to where he gets all these. He gets old classic bands to reunite and play killer nostalgic sets for people that haven't heard that music live in 30 years, 40 years. And then he's also really good. He's got a good ear about pulling the new blood in and introducing that same crowd to the new blood. And he keeps it, I don't say keeps it true. He keeps it at a level to where it's not this big, gigantic, overgrown fest that is not enjoyable. It still feels like an intimate experience. And he knows that. That's why he's done it this way from day one, and continues to do it that way. And, when he starts to get, too big, that's why he started doing the Keep It True Rising thing. It's like, well, I'm getting all these opportunities for all these bands coming over. Don't want to make Keep It True too large. Let's just make another small festival, just like Keep It True, just spaced out time wise. He knows what he's doing, man.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah, that's one of those. I like drool every time I see one of the lineups. I'm like, man, every year I'm like, oh, I wish I had the cash to go, like, because I still haven't made one of those to go and see the show. I've only ever been over there at shows that we've played. So it's like, man, I really want to. Every year, I'm like, oh, I really want to go see this. And then between that and like Up the Hammers, it's like However Hammerberg always has great
Yep.
fest. So it's like, man, they just and Ollie is just really good at putting these lineups like for Keep It True and for Keep It True Rising are like, and like I said, droll worthy. It makes me crazy that I can't be there.
He knows the reputation that he has, and he wants to maintain it. So he, he doesn't accept anything less than what's right. And I mean, not a lot of people can do that. A lot of people, once they get so successful, start compromising, and the product at the end of the day gets diluted. But he just refuses to do that, and that's super admirable for sure.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
All right. Butch, any closing questions or anything you'd like to toss out?
Man,
we covered quite a bit here.
We covered so much, man.
We did.
I mean, we could talk about, I'm like, honestly, like, I'm amazed. We've talked about this before. Like, the fact that you sing the way you do and you like basically just stepped into it. And I didn't even realize when you were singing for Dofka that you were kind of like learning that style almost like, on the fly, because to see you sing back then, I can remember joking with you at the shows about like, I'm like, how the fuck are you going to smoke cigarettes, drink, and get on stage and like be like godly like that? It was unbelievable.
Dio style, baby. I learned from Dio.
Yeah. Do you warm up at all, or you just do it? He like Dio is just like step on a stage, first note out of his mouth is the
Go
first
cold.
time he sings. It's admirable, man.
Alcohol and nicotine was Dio's MO, and it worked for him. So why fuck with perfection, right?
Right, man.
I agree, though. Your voice has always been incredible, and you are able to harmonize seamlessly with whoever it may be in either group or bands that you're in, too.
Well, that boils down to, I don't want to say luck, Mike, but it doesn't always work that way. I will say that I have worked with people, and I thought the same thing. Like, well, if you sing harmony, if you know how to sing harmony, it's going to sound good, no matter who you sing with. That is not necessarily true.
Right.
And it really depends. Those two voices really have to complement each other.
Yeah.
Three voices or whatever. If they don't complement each other, it's not going to sound good.
Good point.
It may be technically correct pitch wise or whatever, but that doesn't mean it's going to sound good.
Right.
And I've just been lucky. Brimstone, super lucky to where.
Yeah, you and Corey sound great together.
Yeah, Corey's voice and my voice blend together really well. And I lucked out, double bonus with Quinn Lucas to where he's a fantastic guitar player, and he's got a register in his voice that fits perfectly with the higher harmony stuff that I lay down on the records.
Yeah.
So I don't have to tell him what to do ever. He just does it, and it works. And thankfully, again, the timbre and the tone of his voice, I think, much like I kind of mold my voice around Corey's voice in Brimstone, I think Quinn does that with my voice in Ironflame and Icarus, and it works. It works.
Yeah, it's outstanding in both bands, man. I really appreciate I remember the first time hearing Brimstone, and this is when John was still in the band too. Just the harmonies from you guys, you didn't hear that much in that style of music at the time. To have a band come out and have 3-part vocal harmonies going on, we're like, holy shit! Like,
yeah, it was rare.
Yeah, that was I the same thing. Actually, that was one of the first reasons that I reached out to contact you guys in 2014 to come up and play, because that was, composition wise, it was great, but those harmonies, I was like, whoa, that was icing for me, man.
Yeah, it was a magical thing that just, again, right place, right time.
Yeah.
And we still incorporate the 3-part harmony thing on the records. And we're we're peppering it in. Dave's been doing some backup harmonies too. It took a few years of jamming with him before we realized he actually had a voice.
That's cool.
But he's got a microphone back there now.
I was just gonna say.
He's throwing down stuff too, which I can safely say is the most difficult thing in the world. I can't imagine anything more difficult than playing drums and singing.
Yeah.
I think those two things are like so hard to do at the same time. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I can't even
We got Dave
imagine.
doing that.
Well, Andrew, we would like to really sincerely thank you for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute blast catching up with you and everything you were involved in. So don't be a stranger. Jump on with us anytime that you want. You got
Anytime
something
you
new
want,
coming
man.
up? Yeah. You want to
Right
chit
on,
chat?
man. Well, I
Just-
appreciate y'all. Thank you
let
for
us know.
having me.
Been a great time. So
Oh yeah.
all right, I'm Merciful Mike.
I'm Butch Balich.
We've been with Andrew CAGNA. Oh my God, botched the ending here.
We'll get it in the edit.
I'm quite used to it. No worries.
Do it
If you-
again.
If you've watched us, Andrew, we always screw up the end anyway.
Yeah,
so-
no worries at all.
All right, we will see everybody very soon on the next episode of For the Sake
For the sake of
of
heaviness.
Heaviness.
Like and subscribe.